Welcome back. Today I want to catch you up on Darktide's latest update and when I think the game will actually be worth coming back to. And I want to catch you up on where I've been because I've been missing for basically a full month. I've been renovating my house with the sheer power of learning through YouTube videos, and I ripped all the floors up myself, and now that I'm done with that, there's going to be more than 4 big guys finishing the rest of the house off. So I hope you've all been having a fun summer, but we've got to get down to business. So I'm going to light this off with the changes they made to some weapons, really completely breaking the meta here with this massive update. So when we look at the old tier list and move the revolver to B tier, everything else basically ends up staying the same. And then when we move over to the melee tier list, the shield does the exact same thing that it did before. It's been the same since the first Okran guide, like in December, where you just use it to apply bleed to everything in front of you to rot it all out. So the extra damage on the cleave really doesn't change anything at all, but the stagger consistency versus the big boys was an okay change. And I hope when they actually do rework it that they don't remove its only strength, but that's probably what's going to happen. So I really think when they talk about doing big updates, they should actually deliver a big update instead of a handful of arbitrary changes that don't really do anything. The revolver thing was nice, but they have had a couple updates that shifted a ton of things around for the better, and I don't know where that mindset went. But it's not like a meta even really matters anymore, and most people just play whatever they have the most fun on. If you've been watching the streams, we just run meme builds the entire time to keep things interesting, and there really never has been a massive challenge on Darktide if you've gotten a good weapon with decent blessings. The ridiculous damage scaling that comes from them just compensates for more mistakes than anything else. And when we talk about the blessings that they did end up changing, they didn't have a big impact at all. And for a massive balance pass that was promised 2 months ago, there hasn't been any massive changes, only very minor tweaks. And it's starting to feel like they stopped caring about trying to keep things interesting. I've always thought blessings should be fun, cool things that change a weapon's dynamic instead of just a flat % damage increase, because bonus damage is just boring and makes the game way too easy. Something like the Ripper rounds that has never come out would be an amazing addition to the bolter. And when you think about things like Charmed Reload or Deflector, they change the way you use the weapons altogether and adds a function to them that makes them more fun. And I think that's usually a good thing as long as it doesn't turn into something like the 40+ swings bug in a row with Power Cycler. There's so much room for improvement on so many weapons, and it just feels like it's getting completely neglected. And when we take a look at the meat of Update 11 that came with crossplay and a new condition with an update to Enclave and Barrows, it really looked pretty good on paper. And in my Darktide deep dive review, crossplay was something I really wanted, and it's a big step towards bringing people together, which is what Rejects Unite failed to do. And this crossplay update should have been part of those 2 maps. It would have made a massive difference. But in the last few weeks, it caused a ton of connection issues, and they do seem to have gotten it sorted out for the most part, so that's a good thing. After getting a lot of feedback from you guys, you did say that crossplay was an insanely hard thing to implement from a couple of YouTube game developers. I don't know if you're real game developers, but why would you lie in the YouTube comments? But moving on, the new Enclave and Barrows like outro area is actually pretty fun. It has a lot of enemies to fight, and making all these final holdouts more interesting is something I'd like to see a lot more of. And I'd also like to see some more interesting game modes. And unfortunately, that's the opposite of what the game mode Elite Resistance is, where we still see Fat Shark being completely disconnected from what people actually want to play. To summarize this mode, by the way, it's basically just bullet sponge difficulty, and we all know how fun that is. I think most people here have played quite a few different horde shooters. Anytime there's a bullet sponge difficulty, it always just ends up being annoying, and it's a very lazy way to increase difficulty. And it's basically just been removed altogether from the overwhelming negative feedback it received. No game has ever found a way to make bullet sponges fun because it literally can't be fun. So making a whole difficulty around bullet sponges was a really stupid idea. And originally it did give some bonus materials, but they took that away too. And with so much actual good feedback from the community and creators, basically just everybody who plays the game, it just seems really obvious what game modes they need to add. And the core of Darktide really needs more fun things to do and more fun modes like Shock Troop Gauntlet to keep people interested, because it's a game mode for everyone. High shock is basically the only thing that puts pressure on you, and that's why it's fun. But when you look outside of that game mode and things that are actually fun, you remember moments like 2 monstrosities spawning basically the entire time you play. You get 2 big beastie boys at the same time, and you're never going to forget battling through that moment because it's really fun. Or when you see 10 maulers or crushers, it's pretty engaging and hard to deal with. And they don't need to have extra HP for that to happen. They just need more of the enemies. And if they really wanted to change the dynamic of the game, adding a new specialist or enemy disabler would provide a lot more content than just a gun change or a new map. Even something as simple as increasing the movement speed of lesser enemies by like 25% would force you to completely change the way that you play. And from the very beginning, the bugged game mode with endless zombies was always the most fun and the most challenging. If you're lucky enough to play it, you know how stressful and taxing it is to have to battle through over 10 to 20,000 enemies in a mission, because Darktide is just a very easy game until all the elites and all the chaffs stack up together. That's when things get hard. And most people are really bad at melee, so being forced to deal with them in an endless amount of zombies combined with the elites is where people are going to fail the most, and it's also where they're going to make the most memories and have the most fun. And at this stage, it just seems obvious to add a holdout horde mission. Everybody wants it. It would just be insanely fun, and it would be a really great place to go test out your best gear and see what you could get up to, how many waves you could possibly do before you just get overwhelmed. And considering it's been so heavily requested by so many people, I don't understand how we end up with elite resistance bullet sponge instead of that. It just doesn't make sense altogether. Even the play area would be small because you don't have to go anywhere. They seem so stubborn about everything that needs to be changed and are very clearly just disconnected from what will actually improve Darktide's future and make it more fun for everybody. It seems like they've almost gone back to launch where they aren't listening to changes that the gameplay loop needs to improve. There's a reason that all the games focused on the people having fun are gaining players during the summer sale, and why Darktide is only bleeding off more people. They also promised they would be more consistent at updates and provide regular updates, but communication and updates are getting more inconsistent and less frequent. I've talked about this on the live stream before, but it really comes back around to heavy developer mismanagement. As we found out, the game director is from a random mobile game, so it explains a lot of the core direction and all the garbage mechanics of the crafting system. But with them announcing that they're trying to push out console, it's become clear that they committed too much of their team to it with how slow the main game's updates are. And I do understand that console players think they want this game. I see it on Twitter a lot, but they haven't played it and don't understand that if they get the current version of it, they're going to have the same problems and it's just going to die again. Plus, I can't imagine them being able to run this game on a console at all because every update, it barely works on PC. So when they drop it on console, they'll have to update it and PC at the same time, which is just going to slow down the already non-existent updates even more. And getting the released version of the game into a state where it isn't in a death spiral obviously should have been a priority. I don't know how the guy in charge is in charge. It is actually mind-blowing. And the only player agency we've seen is crossplay in 8 months into the game. Just looking at other games changing to the current meta of caring about their players and showing love to the people that support them goes a long way, and every game that's putting its players first is gaining a ton of new people. The past of a game stops mattering almost altogether when it has consistently good updates with substance to them, and it's really coming down to how games respect your time by being fun. Nobody cares if they're putting infinite amount of hours into a game if they're enjoying themselves. But none of Darktide systems are fun. They only exist for artificial playtime inflation because they don't think the game's good enough to keep you there by itself. Because the pinnacle systems they push you towards gatekeep you from using what you want to. The only thing we've seen across the board from everyone, it doesn't matter who you are, every single person wants crafting unlocked. It doesn't solve the core issue of the system, but it at least makes it user-friendly. And adding the ability to buy a target blessing for milk coins would fix the entire system overnight. And as time goes on, the reason most of us enjoyed Darktide for its fluid combat and fun engaging moments is starting to disappear too. Every update is making the hit reg worse and worse, and Fat Shark never restarts their servers unless there's a big update. So as updates get spaced out more, the worse the game gets in between them. They really need to do these weekly server restarts to help compensate for this. There's a reason why every other decent live service game does restarts, and it's to help prevent lag and memory leak on their end. And there's a lot more to say about Darktide, but I did most of it in the review. So when we look at just the recent stuff that didn't make it into the last update that needed to, I just don't think Fat Shark is actually chasing after how to make the best game for the player anymore. And if Darktide ever wants to truly recover, it needs to put the players first, which is something they boasted themselves as one of their strengths, but it's been their biggest weakness since launch. And you can directly compare it to tons of games that just do everything they promise better. Having more consistent and good updates can make even dead games that people lost respect for come back to life, because as long as the game's good, which the gameplay is actually good when the servers get restarted, and the company is transparent about what they're working on, people will just be happy to play it. And if you get bored of a game and you quit, you'll want to come back to see the new update later. But if you hate a game when you quit, you'll be jaded forever and you'll never ever give it a second chance. And that's exactly where we're at right now with Darktide. From my perspective, it looks like Fat Shark has some chip on their shoulder and some ego to prove something. And the longer they hold on to this ego, the longer they're going to keep failing the people who want to support them and play their games until there's nobody left. So if you want to come back to Darktide, you have to understand the current situation. They mismanage their developers to the point that nothing is getting done. And other than random changes to look busy with anti-fun game modes and no player urgency at all with less consistent updates and all their resources going towards a DOA cash grab console release, you can probably figure out that nothing is going in the direction that it should anymore. But this video is part of the promise I made to you guys to keep covering Darktide, and I do have more things planned for it if they ever do a decent update, but other things are going to take a priority for now. So I hope you can enjoy the new videos I'll be bringing to the channel, and I want to thank all of you that stick with me in the future. I honestly had so much fun making the What Happened to Darktide video that it made me want to do more reviews, but I also have a lot of community involved videos where I'll be grabbing people from Discord and the live stream to go do stuff on some of my private servers. And Ogrins and a Bonks on the alt channel was one of the first versions of what I'm cooking. I do it regularly on stream where we go stack some meme builds, and I'm probably going to do that again sometime soon. And don't worry, every time L Shark does an update, I'll be there to let you know what's really happening with it. And if they ever decide to be W Shark, I'll be there for that too. And so everything else you need will be linked in the description, including the community Discord, so you can keep up to date with what I'm doing. And I hope you all stay beautiful, blessed, and safe out there so I can see you in the next one.